Mental health, what is it and how does it impact you? So, the reason I'm shooting a video around this is as somebody who has had his challenges with mental health, I've experienced various different aspects of it, from the real lowest of the lows through to the days where it was more anxiety based and I was just all about my feelings and not necessarily able to move forward as a result of that. So, the thing that annoys me is there is a lot of stigma around mental health, especially men's mental health. But also, what there isn't is there isn't much out there on how you can move forward if you're struggling. What are the things you can do to move this feeling on? Now, if you go out there and you study and you look at a lot of things, I'll say take action, go and do things that you take pride in and that feel good and make you feel good about yourself, and just keep doing those. And those things are going to be what's going to help you move forward. Now, whilst if it's something that for some people that may work, and for myself, I found it worked up until one point. When it was for myself and I was trying to move my own demons on, taking action, pushing myself forward, it made a massive difference in myself and it helped me get clarity in those times where I was working hard. It got rid of those negative thoughts. However, sometimes some people will experience things that's not actually to do with themselves directly. Now, what am I talking about? With myself, where the experience came in was when my son was diagnosed with tumours and required chemotherapy. All of a sudden, no matter what action I took, it wasn't a battle that I could move on. There was nothing I could do today that would help me move that forward tomorrow. It was very much out of my hands. And as a result of that, taking action, going out and running at 5 o'clock in the morning, yes, it was great. It was helping me for that half an hour while I was running. But as soon as I'd finished, I'd come back to the same situation that I wasn't able to move forward. And this is where I started to realise that it wasn't just about taking action. Actions are great. However, I believe there's something that we need to look at before we start taking action. Now, this for me was the game changer. This for me was what enabled me to move those thoughts on and has really enabled me to now get to a point where I'm not going to say things don't faze me. However, my process that I go through, the structure that I have, enables me to take those challenges at a different pace and look at them from a different angle. Now, what I'm actually talking about is the language we use, the words that come out of our mouth, the words that sit in our mind, the words that we say to ourselves on a daily basis. Now, if I look back at where I was when Ethan was going through his chemotherapy, my thought and my process was, if I take an action today, that's going to make me feel better. And who am I to make excuses when my son can't? He can't decide today, I don't feel like having chemotherapy. It was non-negotiable. So I started to use that mindset. I started to go, okay, well, I'm going to go for my run regardless. I'm going to do the cold plunge regardless. I'm going to read the book regardless. I'm going to do all these things because who am I to sit here and for excuses when I'm telling my son he can't, he has no choice. So I was going to work with the same thing. However, by doing that, yes, I was taking the action, but my understanding and my language I was using on a daily basis was, these are what's going to get rid of my feelings. When in reality, all they did was suppress them for that period of time. Then when I came back and I sat down and I had some period to myself and some moment to collect my thoughts, there it was. That bad language, that why me, for fuck's sake, it's always this way, I always get the bad hand. And for me, this is something that I suffered with from a young age. I always neglected myself. I always looked at myself as a letdown. I never saw any success in anything I'd achieved, even though I've won 100% of the battles I've ever gone against. So what changed? I started to change the language. So, for example, we're all going to get shit happen. We're all going to have things land on our desk. But how do we look at them? Is it a case of, me again, here we go, we're back at Groundhog Day, let it begin again? Or are you looking at this and going, okay, well, whilst I don't appreciate what's been given to me, what is it I need to learn from this? What's the lesson? What can I take away from this that's going to make me look at life different, take actions differently, and approach this situation differently. Now, I started to look at it, and for me, I've always been a person that's been very focused, very much driven. For me, when my son was going through the chemotherapy, it was actually about taking a step back for a moment and looking at what's important in life. It was about prioritizing family and family time over opportunity to earn money that's going to be able to make experiences with family, when in reality I already had all of that. It was there, I just wasn't using it. So I started to look at that, and rather than going about what I hadn't got, I started looking at what I have got. And I started using the language that really helps me to engage in those inner feelings of pride, those inner feelings of achievement. And it's amazing because since I started to approach this differently, and I really do believe, language is one element, and I believe it's the key. However, you're not going to fool yourself. Your brain isn't stupid. So if you just think sitting there changing your language is going to get you a bit better results, then I need to check in now. You've got to take action. So there is a bit of a loop when it comes to is the language we're using and the actions we're taking on the back of it. The language we're using and the actions we're taking on the back. And if you find a good mixture and you get a good balance, so for example, myself, I do the cold plunge. I do it most days. I'm not going to say I do it religiously every day, but I try and do it most days. Now, don't get me wrong, it is bloody cold. When I want to get in it, my thoughts are that's not going to be fun. However, what I've started to do is, rather than looking at those parts, and this is where I'm saying about the language change, rather than allowing those thoughts to overwhelm my mind, take control, and ultimately put me off the idea of going in the cold plunge, I check myself before I go in. So the second those thoughts come in, I go, okay, but why do you do the cold plunge? What is it you like about doing it? What's the benefit? What's the reason? And for me, bar the tapping into that, telling that to shut up and gaining control, there are a multitude of other assets and benefits from doing it. So for example, it's good for burning fat. It's great for kickstarting the day and getting that sort of sense of achievement and discipline. It's also proven to help with many other health benefits as well. So I think, for me, I remind myself of those, but then I also remind myself of that sense of achievement. When I get out of that cold plunge, my body's so alert that, everything is buzzing. I've got this real buzz about me. And that's a sense of achievement as well. And so I remind myself of those feelings, and I'm using language that's reminding myself, how do you feel about that? How does this engage with you? And how do you feel when you've achieved it? And it's amazing that by looking at that and using the language that's associated with the achievement, rather than the language that I go in there with initially, which is, I really don't want to do this. This is going to be bloody cold. This is going to hurt. This is going to push me. That's all victim mindset. Whereas the achiever and the successor and the person who wants to succeed focuses on the feelings they get from the achievement. So appreciate this is a bit of a long video. I wasn't intending it to be this long, but I really do want to just sort of encourage you to think about the language you are using on a daily basis and think about how that affects your feelings. Think about how those feelings then affect your demeanor and your posture, and then look at how that then impacts the actions you take. And I really want to encourage you here to just look at the language, look at the patterns you have, and if you see there's something there that needs to change, make the change. That's all it takes. A decision, something to work towards, and change will come. So I really want to leave you on a positive one. So after today, don't just go away and say, I am great. It's not going to work that way. It's not as simple as that. But look at the actions you want to take. Look at the mindset you have that stops you from doing them. But then check yourself and write all the pros, write all the reasons why you do it, all the feelings you get from that achievement, and all the things that you gain from completing that exercise, that action. Do that for 2 weeks. I beg you, do it for 2 weeks and see how your mindset will start to look at the action and the results gained from it rather than the feelings you have as you approach. Have a blessed day. Have a blessed week. Love you all.